Welcome, everyone, to the Workforce Navigator podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we have on a very interesting guest. We have on Michael Wong, and Michael is the CEO of Genea. You have a big private equity background. You have a lot of different perspectives that aren't necessarily the traditional perspectives that you would expect from private equity. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. We're going to talk, though, specifically about the biggest drivers of growth within a company and why HR deserves a seat at the table. But before we do that, I would love to just have you give it a chance to explain a little bit more about your background before we get started.
Sure. Once I graduated from college, I went straight to Wall Street. I was an investment banker for a couple of years and then spent 15 years doing private equity at firms like Blackstone and Leonard Green. So very fortunate to have worked at those companies. And I learned a ton about a lot of different industries, and it was good to me. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur. So even though I was in private equity, overseeing from a board level a lot of management teams, and that was very gratifying, I really wanted to have my hands on the steering wheel and really run my own business. So as fate would have it, there was an opportunity for me to personally buy a large stake in Genea in November 15th, 2011, and become CEO. And so in hindsight, it may have been kind of crazy because I'd never actually been in a business before, let alone become CEO of a business. But I thought, here's my chance to really do something that I always thought I wanted to do. So I took that, pivotal fork in the road. I took the detour and made that bet. And so it's been an amazing journey. The company I first took over had good technology, was struggling as a business, was basically effectively insolvent, but I felt I could turn it around and build something of it. And so it's been an amazing 13 and a half year journey so far. We first started off with an HVAC automation platform that we sell to high-rise office buildings. So some of the biggest buildings in the world are using that. One World Trade Center in New York City, Salesforce Tower in San Francisco. The tenants are using our app to turn on the HVAC for their floor, and it automates all the building. Leaning in with our customers and hearing about all the positive feedback about that solution, we built a foundation of trust, and we started being asked, can you help us with other problems? And so we leaned in hard with our customers, and we developed another utility billing solution, which we launched in 2015, and now we're billing for over 25,000 meters around the country. And then most recently, hearing about all the pain points of physical security, all the manual processes, all the on-prem software and hardware that needed to be maintained. We bought the best cloud solution for access control software, and we launched that at basically the beginning of 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, and we've been growing that very broadly. And so we have a Fortune 50 company, a large retailer that's using us worldwide. We have a top 10 owner of hospitals using us worldwide. So yeah, it's been fun to disrupt the physical security industry as well. So that is a quick synopsis of my journey in running Genea so far.
Well, I'd love to take that kind of heritage of innovation and looking at the problem that your clients have and solving that. But a lot of your success is very internally focused too. And we want to talk about things about creating the right high performance teams, the right company culture, the role that HR has. So let me ask my first question. From your point of view, in terms of people and the importance to the business, what are the two greatest challenges that you see to creating long-term sustainable growth?
The biggest challenge in creating long-term sustainable growth, well, there's two aspects of it that I would say. I mean, it's a very broad question, so I'll answer it this way. You have to kind of pick the right industries with the right solution, because I think if you're fighting an uphill battle on just helping create the appropriate value, then I think that's overall just something that you can have a great overall management team and great people. But if you're fighting against the tide, then I would say that's something I'd be watchful for. I came out of private equity, so oftentimes looked at all kinds of different industries, all different types of companies. But if you have just a bad product in a tough industry, it's oftentimes difficult to overcome. And you'd have to go buy that business at a very, very compelling price in order for it to make the math work. Fortunately for us at Genea, that's not the case. So we have very innovative solutions in an industry that desperately needs it, because the industry itself has a lot of antiquated technology. And so we're disrupting antiquated technology and really helping move the needle with through value added new solutions. So that's not the case with us. So I would say that's one thing, is that would be a challenge if we didn't have that. Number two is you can have the best dynamics of wonderful solution, wonderful industry, but if you don't have the right people with the right mindset, working hard and collectively together to go execute, to deliver that value proposition from a team perspective, then that's the other thing, is if you have a broken team or a misguided strategy, I would say you can have all the opportunity in the world, but if you can't realize it with great execution, then obviously that's something that I'm very mindful of.
The mantra has always been in the PE world, the VC world, that invest in the team before the idea, because it's the actual team that's going to execute, right? You have to have both, but the team is so important. The people are so important. I would love to, especially with your PE background, I would love to get your perspective running a company, being in a PE world for so long, on the importance of high performance teams, the importance of people, how we attract those people, how we retain those people, and ultimately, how do we sell the business based on what those people have accomplished?
Yeah, so I've got a couple lenses on that one. When I was in PE, I worked at a firm that definitely had that perspective. So within the private equity landscape, there's all kinds of different types of firms with different types of strategies. Just because a PE firm has money, they actually oftentimes operate very differently. So on the value added spectrum, if on the far right side, that is high value add, we bring not only money to the equation, but we bring a team of former CEOs, former executives that know your industry, and we're going to come in and basically have a 90-day plan of revamping the way you've done your business and really help change the trajectory of it with a group of folks that can help influence that trajectory. That would be like a Bain Capital. We are experts. We can help you with a playbook. There's a lot of firms on that side of the spectrum. On the completely other side of the spectrum is the firm I came from, which is Leonard Green and Partners, where our very outspoken strategy was we don't bring any value add except for we can help you with financing it better. We can help you with strategy, but ultimately you built a great business and we're just going to get out of your way. We're going to make sure that we team up with you and you do what you do well. We'll help augment that with either a mergers and acquisition strategy to help out in that regard, or we will help you with making sure that your balance sheet's in a really good spot. We'll help with all the stuff that is inorganic versus you know how to build this business organically, and we're never going to tell you how to do your job because you know it better than we do. So with that type of mindset, finding the right team was imperative. So another value-added firm, the team was somewhat important, but quite frankly, you feel like you can parachute a team and do it better than the incumbent team. For Leonard Green, it was imperative to find the right management team to make sure that we understood how they do things. And that's part of the underwriting process, is underwriting the team. So that was in PE. When I took over Genea, very different exercise. Genea, when I first took it over, had good technology, but was basically bankrupt as a company and had to go rebuild it from scratch. So team was very interesting at the very beginning because, quite frankly, you can only afford to hire a certain level of talent. And it wasn't necessarily the folks that we ultimately wanted to bring on board, but it's what you couldn't afford at the time. So I had to be much more of a hands-on CEO, and I had a bunch of doers around me, and I couldn't really leverage a group of partners that are experts in being ahead of a operations team or a marketing team or a sales organization. I had to basically do the best I could with common sense and really hire people to go do the day-to-day, but there was not a lot of other leaders around my executive table that I can lean on who could help guide strategy. I had to really dictate it out of the box. And then over time, as we've matured as a business and we've had financial success, then we could start bringing in the next layer of talent, people that had been former managers, and then ultimately people that have been C-suite. So it's mid-level folks and then other executives. And that's where we are right now. So I think with different lenses through my career, I've had to look at talent in a much different way.
So let me ask you then, those are both different ends of the spectrum. with one common goal, whether it's a team on the far right, like you said, that we're the experts in the private equity company, we have our playbooks, this is how that it gets done because we're the team that knows how to run the business. On the other end, it's we're going to turn it over to you. You're the experts in your business. Both of those are a people-driven strategy, right? Just coming at it from different lenses. Where do you land now? Now that you're actually running the business, where's your point of view? Where's Michael's point of view?
Yeah. So where we are right now, we built our business to a point where I can afford to bring in amazing talent. So what we're doing right now is disrupting the smart building automation space. So that's not only financially can we go attract very qualified people, but the story, the mission that we're on is really, really attractive. And when we kind of walk people through what we're doing now, people want to be a part of it. So it's a really good place to be because when I looked at hiring a head of operations a year and a half ago, we had over 4,000 applicants. When we are bringing that head of marketing, we had over 2,500 applicants. Part of it is the story, part of it is our comp is very competitive, and part of it is we do operate with a remote, flexible, high work-life balance approach. So those are hard to come by, especially as a lot of companies are driving folks back into the office. We've actually been highly productive and continue to really excel as an organization remotely. Now, there are some trade-offs that I'm very mindful of in that dynamic is being remote. It's hard to make sure that you have team chemistry. And so we have to be very intentional about that, making sure that we get people together on a regular basis so that we do have that level of face-to-face time and water cooler talk and just bonding. But it's kind of the best of both worlds. If you can really maintain that balance, then I'm not just limited to hiring the best individual that happens to live within driving distance to an office in Orange County. I can look at it from a national perspective, or in some cases, a global perspective of going and getting the best talent.
So again, back to the focus on talent. So if I were to just ask you to put a number to that, like on a scale of 1 to 10.
It's absolutely 10. I spend a lot of my time evaluating our team all the time. I still interview. So half our team's offshore in India. Those are our team members that are basically on the other side of the world. And so it's hard for me to interview those folks because of just, logistics. But everybody who joins our US team, I still interview no matter what level, because I'm not necessarily qualifying them for skill. We have other people that are doing that. I'm making sure I qualify them for our DNA, our culture. So that's how important it is for us on a team level.
So you mentioned the word culture there. How important is the culture to attract and retain those high performance individuals that you're looking so intently to bring on to get to the next level?
I mean, culture, they go hand in hand. To bring on a high performing individual, they can go work at a lot of different places. And oftentimes culture is either the top or one of the top two things that they're looking for. So I'm a team sports person. I've always played team sports growing up. And actually in a lot of situations where you observe a team of basketball players, like you can have a team of all-stars of the most individually talented players, but if they're not working together and they don't have good chemistry, they will generally lose to a team that's got less talent, but they're working very well cohesively as a team. So I carry that very near and dear to my heart in how I run this business. So I'm constantly thinking about making sure that we have a really, really strong team dynamic.
So you talked very eloquently about a very innovative technology and product you're bringing to market and the impact that it has and the story. These are all parts of the success equation. If you had to balance as a CEO and you're saying, I have to move forward with a little bit less than what I want in terms of the optimal high performance team, but I have the best innovative technology that I want. Where's the balance? Is it more important to have a 10 out of 10 on the people with like a 7 or 8 out of 10 on the technology?
I think that's a little bit of an unfair question because like a high performance team can improve the technology to get to where you need to be. So I will always lean on team more so than anything else. You could fix the technology with good team members. Poor team members or a mediocre team with great technology is going to be a mediocre company.
That's what I was looking at. Thank you. What we're trying to do here is we're very, very focused on the HR side of the business in this podcast. And as an industry, HR is pretty much looked upon and recruitment as a support function in the business. Yet we spend so much time trying to bring in the right high performers that the majority of the people in the HR industry kind of feel like they have a hard time getting a seat at the table, yet tasked with bringing in and fueling what is the number one growth strategy in any business is the people. What is the role of, in your organization, or just your point of view? Does HR have a seat at the table? Does it deserve to have a seat?
So our HR person is one of my key right-hand individuals. So, with the lens of team is super important. I'm constantly monitoring what's our recruiting process to make sure that we bring in the right people. And part of it's analyzing skill set, part of it's analyzing fit. And fit, I would say, would tie very closely with culture. So I spent a lot of time with our head of HR on the recruiting side. Equally is we have a responsibility. Just because we recruit somebody, now it's our responsibility to make sure that the person is positioned well to succeed. And so the onboarding process, what does our training look like? I've seen too many companies, even larger companies, where there's not really adequate training, so that somebody has to just kind of look over somebody's shoulder to figure something out. And I think being very clear, what a 60, 90-day onboarding process, it should be very prescriptive. And then once you have that foundation laid, then that person can then flourish. But we owe it to every individual to make sure that they're positioned to succeed and not having to guess at it. Defining the success parameters is important, and each department needs to define that for each of the different roles that we're bringing on board. And so we're very mindful of that. And then the ongoing culture surveys that we do twice a year to make sure that we're not just guessing, are we doing a good job for our people or not? And so we do that in a very quantitative way across the entire company. And then we dial in kind of our analysis at the departmental level to make sure that each department's also healthy, because you can have 3 high functioning departments and you have 3 ones that aren't, and you can just lose sight of the fact that we're missing half the company on this journey. So we want to make sure that across the board, we're performing at a high level. And look, I hold our department leads very accountable, and ultimately me very accountable, to making sure that we're consistent across the board. So it's really a holistic view of making sure that on the people side of things, we're really working well.
If you said there was one thing that you wanted an audience of executives that would be watching this podcast, one thing to take away from a conversation that we're having, what would that be?
Yeah, look, I think HR can have different connotations. Oftentimes it's viewed as compliance and it's policing of things. And certainly there's an aspect of that, the job that is that, we certainly don't want to get in trouble by doing things that we shouldn't be doing. But that's really kind of a small part. If we're doing everything else right, it tends to not be the main focus. The main focus of our people side of things is really how do we continue to nurture our team? How do we grow our team? How do we continue to improve culture? So that is not just something that is important to me, but it's important to everybody on the executive team, that they understand the value of the people side of our business. And as such, I would say we're pretty good across the board at all our department heads leaning in with our HR leader and that team to really make sure that we're hitting all our objectives from a people perspective at the departmental level. So I would just say making sure that if it was just me who cared about it and I didn't really hold each of the different departments accountable to making sure it permeates throughout the organization, that would be a problem. Ultimately, it just needs to be something that is very consistent throughout the organization.
And if you had advice for other CEOs in terms of how do they work with their HR department as a strategic lever in the business, what kind of advice would you give them?
I think in some respects, you kind of alluded to it, making sure that the HR leader has a seat at the table at the true decision making. We have a quarterly ELT in-person meeting where our HR head is very involved. And so I think that's important. It sets a tone. So everything we do also has a people lens to it. If we're building some new product, well, we got to make sure that HR understands how to align our recruiting so that it's consistent with not only skill set, but the type of person we're looking for. If we're looking at building a go-to-market team, what's the DNA of the individual that will be successful on our go-to-market team It's not just somebody who's been in the industry for a long time, because for us, we're a disruptive force in the security industry. Somebody who's been in the security industry for a very long time with one of the legacy incumbent firms, they're not a good fit. We learned that, unfortunately, a little bit the hard way. We realized that that's more of an account management role versus we want people that have an entrepreneurial DNA and have demonstrated that throughout their career. So that's aligning ourselves from recruiting on what kind of person we're looking for, not just do they know physical security, have they been in the industry, but what's their background, what kind of company have they worked with before that has an entrepreneurial, we got to evangelize a product, as opposed to it's a stake dinner approach.
So one last question for you is that if we were to call this and the topic that we're talking about here, why HR has a seat at the table in any company, why would you say that should be the case?
Well, it's because ultimately, what are the main drivers of our business are the people. Look, my job as CEO is to lay out a clear mission and a vision of what we're trying to get accomplished, but then ultimately bring on outstanding people to align with that mission, get excited about it, and wake up every day to go make it happen and do it in a team-oriented fashion. That is part of my team sports days. When I coach my kids in basketball and their friends, that was what I thought about every day is here are a bunch of individually talented kids. Here's the game plan, and then hold them accountable to work with each other to go make it happen. And when I saw that level of success with them just understanding it, and you have to make sure that they understand it. So you want to trust but verify. And as soon as you understood that they understood what needed to be done, the magic happened. So quite frankly, when I came from private equity and came into the private sector, I exercised more of my skills coaching my kids in basketball than I did in anything I learned in private equity initially, because that's what I felt was warranted. And to this day, I still do that. So aligning my strategy and then working with my head of HR to go recruit the right people, and then making sure that we have the right DNA, the right motivation, the right processes to not only recruit, train, but retain the right individuals is a key aspect of what we do every day.
Well, here's what I know. People are going to have questions after hearing all of this. Is it appropriate we give out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out to you?
Sure.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, thank you very much. The goal of this podcast is to bring a number of different points of view together. And if we all do that and bring our insights and perspectives, that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And I appreciate that you did that for us today.
Okay, no problem. Glad to do it.